What was the hardest part about writing books in general?
Well, what was the hardest part about writing City of Bones, specifically? Oh, I'd never written a novel before, so it was my first novel ever. And teaching myself how to write a novel, the structure of a novel, was the hardest thing. I mean, not that every book since then has been easy, but every book since then has been easier, because when I sat down to write it, I didn't know I could. You know, I thought, I want to write a novel. I've never written a novel. I mean, it's like saying, I want to build a house. It's a big undertaking. And so teaching myself how to write a novel was the most difficult thing. Right here? Yes.
I just want to ask, I have a very big imagination, so I always pictured myself in the book. I just want to know, if you yourself were a character in the book, how would you describe yourself?
Good question. You know, like you always want to think that you would be the hero, you'd be Chris Jackson or Harry Potter. That would probably be it. I'm really lazy, so I just like to be evil and big headed supporter. Yeah. Right there? Yeah.
Magnus Bane is hilarious. What was your inspiration for him? Magnus Bane is like one of the funniest characters ever. What was your inspiration for him?
My friend John. Not John Green. People always ask me if it's John Green. I mean, I love John Green, but
John Green would not inspire Magnus Bane.
But I wrote Magnus before I met John. And John is also hilarious, and often when I meet him drunk, but not. My other friend John, who used to go clubbing with me when I first lived in New York, had this magical ability, we called the magical ability of glitter. Because he would show up for all outings completely coated in glitter. It wouldn't come off all night. We couldn't figure out how he did it. I found out like years later, but it's really disgusting. And now you don't want to know if there's glue involved. So I was out with him, we were dancing. It was really actually very much like the beginning scene of City of Bones, which was kind of based on it. We were down at a place called the Bank, which no longer exists, but it was in New York, golf club. We were out dancing, John was covered in glitter. We left, it was late, he wanted something to drink. We went to a pizza joint so he could get a Coke. We were up in front of the counter, and he ordered the drink, and the woman turned around to look at him, and she just dropped the drink and splashed everywhere. And she said, "Never in my life have I seen such a shining man." So I was like, I'm going to write a story about you, John. Somebody like you. He was also like 6'4", so that's why Magnus is so tall. So I was like, somebody like you, covered in glitter, all that. So, yeah, that was my inspiration for Magnus. Over there.
Hi there. Okay, now that you're a professional writer, which is very exciting to say, would you consider characters that are most like yourself or most not like yourself easiest to write? And part two, who's the hardest character to write? Or easiest? Or in the middle?
Simon and Tessa are the most like me in personalities and things that they like. So they're very easy to write. Magnus is the most fun to write. When it's kind of like a party whenever he shows up. I think probably the hardest characters to write, certainly write their viewpoints and make them convincing are villains. I mean, they're, you need somebody you know, an opposing force, something for your heroes to strive against. You don't want them to seem cartoony. You don't want that kind of villain who's like, I'm gonna, you know, put a laser beam on the moon and blow up the earth. Also inconvenience me because I'm on the earth and it's where I get my stuff. Because that's not really compelling. So nobody is the villain of their own story. All villains have justification for the things that they do and a belief that they're in the right. So creating a villain who believes that they're right, really has a, you know, conviction and has reasons that are even sympathetic for the bad things that they do is difficult. But you're very rewarding.
Okay, so probably earlier while you were asking questions, I can kind of see or I think you're a cat lover. So is that kind of the reason why you brought Church and the Cat into Inferno Devices and then made him come up in the Mortal Instruments series?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Church is an homage to my friend, to Polly Black and her husband Theo's cat, Fizgig. They had this cat, oh God. Fizgig was like the world's most angry cat. And we were, while I was writing City of Bones, my boyfriend and I were house sitting for Holly while she was away on a book tour. And so we slept in her room, and every night we would go to sleep, and every night we would wake up with the cat having leaped on us and scratching us viciously. We tried locking him out and many other things, but it didn't work. So by the end of the week, you know, when Holly came home, we were both covered in scars. And I was like, your cat is like the meanest cat in the world. And he's so angry all the time. And they were like, well, you know, he thought that you were taking our places, you know, he's trying to get back at you. So Church was sort of an homage to Fizgig, the angriest cat in the world. And oddly, when I wrote him, oddly people seemed to really like him, get attached to him. People were always asking me, you know, who's taking care of Church? Who's feeding him? I was like, expensive things, I'm sure he's fine. So yeah, and I love the idea that he's like an immortal cat who has like all these magical secrets and been around for a long time. So that's why I wanted to be immortal devices. And I like the fact that he only likes jam. Everybody else, that's great. He only likes you, he likes everybody else. All right, shaking their books.
A lot.
Okay, all those people. So, get together. I don't know if you have one question or many. Got it.
They're really pretty.
Okay, one of the things that I love about your books is how diverse all your characters are, like ethnically, and how they're not all blonde or how they're not all brunette. How do you decide what your characters are going to look like and what their personalities are going to be?
I don't know, it's sort of a part of the character creation, you know, as you're sort of sitting there and thinking, like, what does this character like? What are their motivations? What's their childhood? What are the things that formed them? And one of those things is you think, you know, what is their ethnic background? How did that shape them? How did that make the person that they are? You know, making Jem half Chinese was, I mean, partly I was writing in Victorian England, but I did not want to have an all-white cast, and I was trying to get out of that in some way that made sense, and making him half Chinese. What came from my reading about the period, reading about England's interactions with China, and the amount of, and that there were actually a lot of sort of, in terms that there were a lot of marriages between Englishmen and Chinese, and there were a lot of Eurasian children, and what their experiences were like growing up in Victorian England, and how that would inform Jem's character. And so that, you know, interested me. Magnus is half Indonesian. That just came sort of fast up with. I was trying to come up with Magnus' character. I took a trip to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and there were paintings, like a whole room of paintings of just Dutch men. The Indonesian used to be the Dutch East Indies was owned by Dutch, and it was paintings of Dutch men and their Indonesian wives and their half Indonesian children, and there were all these long stories of what it was like to grow up like that, you know, biracial at the time where that was extremely rare, and that sort of fascinated me and became part of Magnus' background. So I think it's just, you know, one of those things that factors into sort of character creation when you're thinking about it. And also, you know, I think it is boring when everybody's blonde or everybody's dead. You know, you want to mix up, hopefully, you know, and bring in more diversity and bring in different sexual orientations as well. You know, and I knew from the outset that I wanted to have gay characters, lesbian characters as well. So, you know, I've just been happy that it, you know, right where my ears.